This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day. It is May 7th. Welcome to Pop Daily, PIX on Politics Daily. I'm Dan Mannarino. By the way, a lot of you tuned in to watch our interview with former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Many of those snippets of that interview have now gone viral. He is far and away the front runner in most recent polls. However, with that being said, a number of candidates like Zohran Mamdani and Zelnor Myrie, Brad Lander, they're just beginning their television ads, which they're hoping will reshape the game, right? And they will help raise some of their name recognition and so on and so forth. Zohran Mamdani had a rally over the weekend where a large number of people showed up. And so that is creating some buzz within the Democratic Party and within the mayor's race, let alone. But just yesterday, former Governor Andrew Cuomo kind of surprised everybody with an announcement that he would also run on what would be the independent line. So let me bring in Henry Rosoff right now and talk to him about what exactly this all means, right? Because this came as a bit of a surprise, right? He's far and away the front runner. I spoke to him. He was very confident, Henry, in the interview. He actually said that he's the only manager in the race and that the other ones just don't have the experience to be mayor of New York City because they haven't run a large team of people. He said, you know, that besides the budget, you have an employee base of over 300,000 people, and none of them have had that experience. So when this announcement came as a bit of a surprise, kind of walk me through it.
So what he announced yesterday is that he's going to petition for a third-party line, a new party he's creating called the Fight and Deliver Party. Now, this is not unheard of in New York City politics, as people will know. For example, the Working Families Party, which is left of the Democrats, often gives their line to the Democratic nominee. It would not happen in this case. They obviously are big opponents for a while now of former Governor Cuomo. And so he wants to offer this third-party line. And the reason he says he wants to offer this line is essentially to give disillusioned Democrats a different way of supporting him. His spin on the election is not, and this is a quote from him, Trump didn't win, Democrats lost. And he insists he's not abandoning the Democratic Party. He wants to turn it around, but he wants to give voters another option. Opponents of his are skeptical and say this is him sort of rethinking his position within the Democratic Party. Okay,
but his opponents came out very quickly saying, well, this has him scared, right? That it's putting forth this idea that he thinks himself or within his team that he won't win the Democratic Party line in June for the primary, and that he wants to create this to kind of keep the momentum going. And then did he have a response to that?
There was no response per se to that. When I put this idea forward to his people, to his campaign staff, and said, is this just a line essentially for him to run on if he doesn't get the Democratic nomination? The response essentially was, he's winning the Democratic primary. So they're trying to project this air of confidence, but you ran through some of the response. You had Brad Lander, current comptroller, also seeking the Democratic nomination for mayor, saying, you know, this is just sealing the deal, his pivot right towards sort of MAGA Republicans and pointing to various people that have donated to his campaign. You mentioned effectively the response of number 2 in the polls, Zohran Mamdani, the Queens Assemblyman, who had that big rally over the weekend. He said he's scared, there's momentum in our campaign. And then the most interesting tidbit was actually from a comms person out of former comptroller Scott Stringer's department that says, you know, and it was really a bit of analysis more than it was, you know, any sort of positioning in favor or against or whatever toward Mr. Stringer. It was, you know, he only got in this race because it was fairly clear based on all the polling before he even hopped in, he was going to win. And so something in the data, in the numbers, in the internal polling must in fact be shifting for him to even consider, or not consider, to make this move. We have not seen that in any of the public polling, but I've been pressing the campaigns, trying to get my hands on internals to see if there's any truth to that sort of speculation.
Yeah, I mean, and many would say that the game is just beginning. And all the candidates, and I'm sure you've spoken to them, I certainly have, where they all say, well, Andrew Yang had the name recognition, Andrew Cuomo has the name recognition until the television ads begin, until the home stretch begins. And if you looked at what happened in the last cycle, right, in the last mayoral race, it was the New York Times endorsement, even though they say they're not endorsing anymore, but the New York Times endorsement of Catherine Garcia is what kind of surged her to, at one point, even be ahead of Eric Adams in the race for mayor. So some are hoping, right, that his name recognition will subside once these TV ads begin.
Yeah, I think it's what we saw last election, I think, is instructive. You had Maya Wiley, particularly after the accusation made against former comptroller Scott Stringer, came out, rose and carried that progressive banner. I think we're seeing that
Yeah.
actually earlier this time. It's fairly clear that Mr. Mamdani is carrying the progressive banner. And then you saw sort of a moderate alternative to Eric Adams and Catherine Garcia rise. So will we see one of the moderate alternatives to, Andrew Cuomo rise, for example? Zellner Myries trying to occupy that oxygen. Jessica Ramos would certainly like to be that person. Brad Lander would like to say that he's, not just a progressive, but has sort of these practical experience, ideologies with him. And so we'll see if we see more than just the progressive challenger, likely Mamdani, and then the establishment candidate or the likely favorite in Andrew Cuomo. We'll see if this turns into a 3-horse race or if it's kind of a 2-horse race all the way home.
But what's this idea that these candidates can run on other party lines, right? So Eric Adams is saying, well, it's great that Andrew Cuomo is doing this, but he's exactly following in my own footsteps, and I did it before. Eric Adams is saying, I did it before, realizing that I may not have won the primary, the Democratic primary, right? Is this kind of a new concept of saying, okay, if I don't win this, then I could also fall back on this?
Yes, in that sense, because what we've seen is sort of these coalition tickets where I already mentioned, like Working Families Party often aligns with Dems, and they have 2 lines, a liberal line and a moderate line, and Republicans do it as well, the Republican line and the conservative line, a more farther right line. So it's not unheard of in New York City politics, but it being viewed as a fallback option, or even the Mayor Adams outright running as an independent because of his legal troubles, because he thinks he's behind the Democratic primary, because he likely knows he can't win a Democratic primary at this point. And now you have former Governor Cuomo, the far and away favorite, kind of forming this independent line. He says to deflect away from some of the concerns over Democrats and maybe try to bring in moderates, even Republicans that don't want to vote for Curtis Sliwa, the likely Republican nominee. That is a new development, but these multiple party lines is a uniquely New York thing that's not new. The way it's being used is new, Dan.
Yeah, but I was reading some articles that were in the New York Post and a few other places over the weekend that Andrew Cuomo had some big-time donors that are from the Republican Party and that have contributed to other Republican nominees along the way. And some are saying that he is just like Eric Adams in the sense that he's a Democrat he's a Republican cloaked as a Democrat. Is he addressing that at all? So I didn't read these prior to my interview with him, so I didn't bring it up to him.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, he has said that what people want in this city is competence, that he'll be a mayor for all people, and that when it comes to his bona fides as a Democrat, what does it mean to be a Democrat right now? And this you did talk to him about. It's standing up to Trump, right? He says he's most equipped to do that. So he's leaning on the fact that he wants to govern for all and that he will stand up to Trump. And, that's sort of his elevator pitch when these concerns are brought up. It's nothing new that we haven't heard before from him.
Yeah, and he's been criticized, and I do give him credit for doing the interview with us here on PIX 11, right? Because he's been criticized, and he continues to be criticized by other members of the media who are saying, well, he's not doing it. And other candidates who are saying he's hiding from the press. He's hiding from us, meaning he won't show up to forums. And I asked him about the forums. And his answer was, well, these are PR stunts, and I don't want to take part in that. I want to talk to real people. And I kind of pushed back a little bit by saying, well, they are real people that show up to these. And we ourselves were trying to plan a forum with another organization that I won't name right now. And it just kind of fell apart because he wouldn't say he was going to do it. And he said that he'd rather be in the communities. But so it's going to be interesting, Henry, I guess, when you look at what's happening in June. He's mandated to do the debates. And obviously, that's when all these candidates are going to attack him, which is what I think what he's been avoiding on these forum stages.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, pass the smell test to say, I don't want to do these because they're not real people, they're PR tests, I'll go meet real people in the community. It's like, no, you don't want to stand on the same stage and get attacked over and over and over and over. And you know what? I don't blame him. He's up in the polls. It's very unpleasant.
Yeah, why? You don't need to. You don't need to do it.
Yeah, you don't need to. We saw this literally last year with, at the time, former President Trump. Was far and away the front runner. He didn't want to stand on any of these Republican debate stations, get attacked over and over and over. What you have actually that's different this time is the Campaign Finance Board, which grants millions of dollars to these candidates, effectively saying, you have to do this at least twice in the primary phase and twice in the general stage. So he will have to endure this 4 times, as mandated by law if he wants millions of dollars to run his campaign. So, it just putting my political strategist hat on, why endure this any more than you have to? Now, the really interesting question becomes, will that change if the polling changes? If he's tight, if he needs to show that he can, punch and take a punch more than just 2 times before the primary, that's a game changer. And we'll see if he sticks by his pledge to really just go into the communities, or if we see him popping up at some of these forums.
Yeah, all very good points. Henry, thank you for breaking it down for us. And that was just one of our interviews with Governor Cuomo. By the way, we're interviewing all the candidates once again on the PIX 7 Morning News. So that is happening on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we'll have another candidate tomorrow. I believe Zelnor Myrie was here. Scott Stringer was here yesterday, and Zelnor Myrie is tomorrow. So we're airing those in full disclosure, equal time for everybody. And so if Mr. Cuomo wants to come back, he's more than welcome to. But Henry, good to talk to you. Thank you.
See you later.
All right. And so don't forget, everybody, PIX on Politics this Friday. We'll be diving deeper into the race for mayor as well. And plus, besides the fact that we're interviewing all the candidates on the PIX 7 Morning News, we are going to do another round of interviews with all the candidates as we near early voting and election day in June. So stay tuned for details on that. And also this Friday, we're talking to Councilman Eric Botcher on PIX on Politics, as well as Councilmember Keith Powers, to talk to him about very important legislation they're putting forth. And I know it sounds silly, but I do think it's important. They want to take away pedicabs from waiting outside of theaters in the theater district that blast music and wait to pick up these people and block traffic with their pedicabs. It's important legislation. So why they feel the need? Do they think it'll pass? We're going to talk to them about that on PIX on Politics Friday. But in the meantime, it is Wednesday, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. I'm Dan Mannarino. Enjoy the rest of your day.